For more on this, we have reached Ukraine expert Taras Kuzio in The Hague. He's a professor at the National University of Kyiv Mohyla Academy. He's also a research fellow at Henry Jackson Society. So, Taras, thank you so much for joining us. What do you expect will be accomplished from today's talks between Ukraine, Russia, Germany, and France?
Nothing will be accomplished. These talks have been taking place for the last 8 years. Nothing new has been proposed by either side. They're kind of feelers, as it were. The last time the Normandy format of these four countries took place was in December 2019, so quite a while ago. And there's no new proposals on the table. So I'm not optimistic at all. I think it's Germany and France trying to try anything. Sometimes diplomats can be like magicians pulling rabbits out of hats.
Okay, and talk to me a little bit more about this. When you say that, so this Normandy format, as it's called, these talks between Ukraine, Russia, Germany, and France, you've said that they've been crippled from the start. So why is that? Talk to us a little bit more about why you don't think these will be successful.
Because Russia has never had any intention of using the talks for a kind of a compromise peace agreement. The very term compromise is something which is anathema to the people in Moscow. What they always wanted to use the peace talks for was to get Ukraine back into the Russian orbit, Ukraine back into what they call the Russian world. In Moscow, they see Ukraine as part of the Russian sphere of influence, and they wanted to use the peace process, not, as I say, to have where both sides reach some kind of compromise and eventually the war is overtaken by a peace process, but where Ukraine basically puts its hands up in the air, capitulates to Moscow's demands, and says, right, we no longer will be seeking integration into the West, no longer EU and NATO membership as our goal, and we will kind of agree to this very weak federal system of territorial organization with these two Russian separatist entities in the east of Ukraine basically dictating domestic and foreign policy. Believe you me, there's no federal country in the world which is like this, where regions dictate domestic and foreign policy. So because of that, because both Ukrainian presidents have not really put their hands up in the air and said, okay, we agree, then it's got nowhere.
Okay, so wondering then what you think Russia's next move might be. If we already know that there are thousands of Russian troops on the border, we know that in response to that, the U.S. has put about 8,500 troops there as well. What do you think Russia's next move might be?
Well, this is first we have to understand this is a purely artificial crisis. Nothing new has happened. NATO wasn't about to offer Ukraine membership. The U.S. wasn't about to put missiles into Ukraine, which could be fired against Russia. So this is a purely artificial process, which has grown out of the Kremlin's frustration that it wasn't getting its own way in this peace talk where Ukraine puts its both hands up in the air. And therefore, because it sees Ukraine as a U.S. puppet state, it said, we're going to go to the puppet master. We're going to have direct negotiations with Washington, which will go over the heads of Ukrainians and then force them to agree to our demands. It's not going to happen. The West doesn't agree to these sort of Cold War or 19th century terms. This is something that still exists in the minds of Moscow, but the West is not going to agree to demands made against Ukraine and demands made against NATO and the West. So Russia's options, what it's been doing is using its military buildup as a kind of a bully boy tactic to back up these ultimatums sent to Ukraine and the West. I don't believe that there's enough Russian forces in place, which I think would need 500, 600,000 for a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. So, and it's also not possible and not likely that Putin's going to walk away with his tail between his legs and not do nothing. So something in between. And there are many options that Russia has: cyber warfare, terrorism, political destabilization, small-scale invasions. There's now intelligence, both American and British, that Russia would like to change the regime in Kiev, install a pro-Russian puppet regime. These are various, I think, options that Russia is contemplating.
And what are you, just wondering finally, what you're looking for and listening for in the days and weeks ahead? Do you foresee any sort of diplomatic solution here at all?
I don't see any diplomatic way out because Russia's not approaching this in a way that it would agree to some kind of compromise made by both sides and that there could be some kind of way out of this. I think on the Canadian side, it would be good for the Canadian authorities to finally give some military support to Ukraine. They've been actually, and Canadian Ukrainians are quite perturbed that Canada's been very weak in backing up Britain, Poland, Scandinavia, the Baltic states, the US, in providing military assistance to Ukraine since the crisis began in November last year. Where is Canada? Canada was supposed to be Ukraine's major Western ally. It's a missing link in this support for Ukraine. We would like Ottawa to provide some more concrete military assistance. It's better to defend Ukraine to prevent a Russian incursion rather than allow a conflict to happen. Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, that's okay. I just have to jump in because we are out of time, but thank you so much. Taras Kuzio in The Hague. He's a research fellow at Henry Jackson Society. Thank you.